it was a fine line, like teeter-tottering between allowing him to sit with it and deal with the pain and then be like, all right, now, like, it's time.
Right.
I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here to help out. So you got to take it.
Because that's what she's speaking. I was pushing her away because I didn't want her to see me hurt like I was hurting. And because what I was moving through was ugly. You know what I mean? Like,
and he gave me, at one point, he gave me permission to walk away. I remember at one point. And I said, well, I don't really want to. I appreciate your permission and understanding that it's a lot that you're going through personally and that you understand why I would want to walk away. But I'm not going to because life happens. And who would I be to walk away just because you're experiencing trauma?
Hello and welcome to the Oasis space where we disrupt your current chaos with curated peace. I am your host, Patrice Grimes, also known as the Peace Curator. And if this is your first time listening in on the Oasis space, I would love to welcome you, and I'm going to already just call you a peace pursuit, okay? Because I believe that if you're here, you are here for a reason. It is by divine purpose, and you are going to be a peace pursuit like the rest of us. That is the name that we call this community, Peace Pursuits. And really, it is an acronym. Peace is an acronym for a terminology that I've coined for an acronym, meaning being able to pivot even as chaos ensues. You know, as I mention every time in these episodes, conflict and chaos will disrupt our lives. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with some of my personal insight as well as input and perspective from my guests to help you transform that conflict into peace. And essentially, you know, as we go through these episodes, the goal is to help you learn how to communicate more effectively, which means, you know, communicating with compassion and, you know, really just showing up as your authentic self as these conflicts and chaotic events disrupt your life. And so today, as it relates to this topic in particular is really important because as we talk about how to navigate when conflict or chaos disrupts in our own lives, that's one thing, right? But what happens when it disrupts in the lives of our partner or someone else that we care deeply for, that we love? How do we show up for them to create peace or help them to embody peace in the situations that they're going through? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, which is something that I'm really excited about. I don't know. I'm sure for those of you that are my regular peace pursuits, you remember Miss Rylan Chesley at the time who had done the episode, Give Yourself Permission with Self-Care. But this time she is joined by her husband, Sean. And I just love this couple. They are so sweet and have such good energy, and I want to formally introduce them. So Sean and Rylan Harrison are the proud owners of Be Great Fitness, a private gym that offers personal training, group training, yoga, and meditation sessions in Newport News, Virginia. During the course of their 3-year dating relationship, they were recently married in August of 2021. Sean and Rylan experienced significant traumatic events that were full of grief, loss, anger, and depression. While many people would have grown apart due to the circumstances, Sean and Rylan made the conscious decision to lean on each other while they individually navigated their own personal journeys. In their pursuit to uplift their community, Sean and Rylan have been able to share their stories about overcoming traumatic, life-changing events and the importance of utilizing your support system to overcome the ebbs and flows of life. Listen, y'all, this episode is so good. So I want to make sure that you are somewhere that you are going to be able to take some notes and just take in all of the good information that is being shared. With that being said, I'd love to welcome you all into the Oasis space with Sean and Rylan Harrison. Okay. You guys, listen. We are here in another episode of the Oasis Space. And let me tell you how excited I am. Do y'all remember that fire episode that we did with Miss Rylan? Her name was Chesley at the end before, where she gave the episode of giving yourself permission to be selfish with your self-care. I know y'all remember that episode because it was fire. Y'all was telling me all the jewels you took away from it. Well, this time we are so blessed to be graced with her and her husband. That's right. This young lady went and got married on this, y'all. She didn't got married, but she's coming in here in the Oasis Space with her husband, Sean Harrison. And I'm super excited for this couple in the Oasis Space because I think this is a timely discussion when we talk about how we are transforming our personal relationships from conflict to peace, particularly as it relates to our personal relationships and our relationship dynamics with our significant others, our spouses, etc. We realize that, like I said, conflict occurs, chaos disrupts in our lives, but how do we show up in those spaces? How do we as partners show up in those spaces? And so one topic that I thought was particularly important to talk about is when we experience grief, something that we all go through, something that is challenging and it really shakes us to our core. But how do we, handle that? So again, this is something that I think is so timely. And so I want to welcome Sean and Rylan to the Oasis Space. Welcome, y'all.
Hey.
What's going on?
All right. So this is what I really want to get into this because I know we were having just a brief conversation and I think, it's pretty well known, at least within the African American population, that we don't typically utilize mental health services, right? And I know you both are in the wellness space, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Rylan does yoga. I know, Sean, you have an Eat Well dieting certification as well. Yeah. And so wellness is something that y'all know about. Like, this is what you do. This is y'all lifestyle, right? So what is it about, I guess just to start off, what is it about that particular field or industry had interested both of you all?
Well, what interested me about the health and wellness industry, back in the day, I used to work out and played sports and all that. And it was just really for fun. Mm-hmm. But as I became an adult and you get older and things aren't as tight and right as they used to be in high school and college, right? You learn that you have to maintain some type of athleticism, some type of regimen in order to have longevity in your life. And so that's where it kind of started for me. After I finished college and entered the working world, I had to figure out a routine. And of course, as life comes, you get away from it a little bit. And then when Sean and I met, he's like a workout guru. Like he's he's like very in tune with health and wellness. And so when we met, you know how you are when you first start dating someone, you want to do all the things that they like to do. It may not be as intense as you like it, but if he would be in the gym, then I would be in the gym too. And then I kind of fell in love with a different part of working out. As we know in the last episode, I've been into yoga for a very long time, but the other part of the wellness industry is strength training and cardio and all that stuff that we really don't like to do. So it kind of really started for me again in my early 20s, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Sean?
Well, growing up, I played sports. So I've always been, athletic and all that, playing football, basketball, wrestling, even baseball when I was younger, but I've just always been around sports. So I had that part, but the fitness, I had to tap into the wellness side of things with the yoga. After a crazy injury, to my knee, I can't go all the way in depth with that, but the crazy injury is just, it was forced to do things I didn't do before, meaning yoga, taking stretching serious, the mental side, because it became mental at that point, just the healing side, therapy, just, it was nonstop. So just the uphill battle, it was something that I wasn't used to. So I had to take a different approach. And for me, it was like the last straw. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like my back was against the wall and you know what I mean? It made me I had to take it serious because at that point, for real, it was like life or death. I was having some crazy thoughts. Taking my own life, you know what I mean? like just from being in chronic pain. Chronic pain drove me that far. You know what I'm saying? So just the meditation side of it, the stretching side of it, like the overall wellness side, adding that to fitness, it was a game changer from what I already knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, man.
That's so important though, because like I said, when you mention, you know, you were already, and how many of us, we focus on the physical aspect, but you know, it took a matter of you, like say, essentially life and death for you to say, okay, I need to actually take my mental health seriously. You know, I need to meditate. I need to look into yoga. I need to look into some other options, right? And like I said before, we see that particularly in the Black community, we know that is, you know, that is not, mental health and wellness is not something that we always readily have access to or even trust the system to help us, right? So, and particularly as it relates to Black men, only 26% of Black men between the ages of 18 44, like they would identify signs of anxiety or depression, things like that, in comparison to their white male counterparts that had the similar symptoms and similar signs, but 45% of them would actually be treated. Right. So it's a significant difference, even though we are more actually overrepresented in the category of depression and anxiety. So when you talk about those things, I think it's so interesting that you even recognize at some point though, okay, enough is enough. I've gotta look into the mental side of this, the emotional side of this, right? And so I'm not sure if you mentioned therapy. Is that essentially what prompted you to seek therapy, or did something else occur in your life?
I went to therapy when my aunt passed. My aunt passed 5 years ago. You know, she was like a mother to me. So I experienced grief back then, but I still didn't know what that really was, because that therapist told me, he was like, man, you fine. You all right. Like, you good. I only went like 3-4 times. So when my mom passed, that's when it rocked me. You know, actually it was delayed. It was delayed.
It was.
Because my mom passed in January, my injury was in June. So I didn't deal with the reality of my mom until my knee happened.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So now I'm literally on my back, and that's when the grief hit me. Because mind you, it looked the same way 5 years ago when my aunt passed, because she was a mother to me.
Right.
So that delayed grief was crazy, because I didn't know it was.
And it was definitely like a hard time watching him go through it as someone who loved him and was trying to love him through it. And I think what happened was, you know how when you experience a traumatic event and they tell you the best thing to do for you is to keep busy, to keep your mind busy. So you're not actually having to sit, like we've talked about, you're not having to sit in the grief.
Right.
And there's no real way around grief. You have to sit in it. So when you experience another traumatic event, like being physically hurt or just being ill for the first time, he had to actually sit down and his mind was still and he couldn't use his normal coping skills.
Right.
And so he was in it, and he was trying to figure out how to get out of it. And it was definitely,
and physically I could not get out of it.
Right. And that's what I was thinking, right? Like how often we busy ourselves so that we don't have to deal with the emotions. We know it's there, but it's like, if I can keep sweeping under the rug as long as possible, you know, and again, you were already into physical fitness, so it was natural for you to probably just keep pushing your body. Let me just
even
create a
growing
new
up playing football, it was you all right, push through it. So pushing through pain, which we should not do, but we often do. Like, you really got to deal with it, you know what I mean? Because it becomes chronic pain, which becomes a mental case. You know what I mean? Like, call it what it is, you know what I'm saying? But that was my first time ever experiencing something like that. That was crazy. But
So before you went to therapy, obviously part of your coping mechanisms would have been working out. Was there any other specific coping mechanisms that you had? to kind of deal with it before actually saying, okay, enough is enough. I know I got to go to therapy now. This is not working.
That and drinking.
Okay. And I think that's common too.
That's right.
Right?
We all do. We all do. Well,
It's common.
my peers, anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's common. It's so common. I mean, if it's not, like you say, if it's not busying ourselves with mundane things, if it's not drinking, some type of drinking, sometimes it's sexual promiscuity, sometimes it looks like overeating, sometimes it looks like not eating. You know, it shows up in different forms. So
I worked a lot.
Right. So exactly. So, okay. And so when you decided, okay, this is not working. Now I'm also physically injured, and you decided to seek out a therapist because you said the first one was just kind of like, all right, brush it off, champ, you good. Right. What process did you go through to identify the right therapist for you so you could really actually start healing in this process? Like what steps did you take?
I took the holistic approach. I didn't even go to therapy the second time. It was when my mom passed. I did physical therapy, but then I did yoga and meditation. And those are my
okay. So this is something you did yourself.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good. So, and then for you, so Rylan, what I want to talk to you about is, you mentioned it earlier, right? Is how hard it is, you know, seeing someone you love going through this experience. And I think particularly us as women, and even I go a step further and say women that are ambitious, like women are naturally used to being nurturers, right? We want to come in, help save the day, whatever. And then particularly ambitious women, it's like we are used to handling business. We're used to doing things ourselves. And it's hard seeing that person you love going through and not feeling like you have the ability to help them. You can say the encouraging words, you can give them the pep talks, you can give the back, you can do those things, right? But at some point, being the best partner is recognizing you got to step to the side to let someone else or let another process help the person you love, right?
Absolutely.
So how was that for you? Like, what point did you realize, like, okay, I love this man, but we need to let meditation or yoga kind of help him heal in this regard?
Well, to kind of encompass the whole story, Sean and I had just started dating maybe 5 to 6 months before his mother passed away. And then shortly thereafter, he was physically injured. So in the very beginning of our relationship, you know, when you're really learning someone and learning what makes them tick, we had 2 traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
That I had to figure out how to be there for him. I feel like for me, I had to take a step back from wanting to be there and nurture. Because typically for me, if someone close to you is passing away, specifically like a mother figure, I'm coming to the house, I'm bringing you food. You know, right. I'm taking care of everything so that you can be in your grief.
Yeah.
But being in a new relationship, not really knowing how he wants to be cared for, I had to pay specific attention to him. And it was at that time when he necessarily wasn't responding to phone calls, but you would respond to texts, or not necessarily asking permission to come over, just really showing up and giving him, you know, words of encouragement or food, or just letting him be. And I found that letting him be in his grief, specifically with the passing of his mom, and letting him deal with it, he reached out when he needed me. And it was just constantly reminding him that I'm here for you, however you need me to be, whatever that may look like. And then when we transitioned to a physical injury within a few months after that, I really, again, it was a fine line, like teeter-tottering between allowing him to sit with it and deal with the pain, and then be like, all right, now, like, it's time.
Right.
I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here to help out. So you got to take it.
Because that's when she's speaking, I was pushing her away because I didn't want her to see me hurt like I was hurting. And because what I was moving through was ugly. You know what I mean? Like,
and he gave me, at one point, he gave me permission to walk away. At one point. And I said, well, I don't really want to. I appreciate your permission. and understanding that it's a lot that you're going through personally, and that you understand why I would want to walk away. But I'm not going to, because life happens. And who would I be to walk away just because you're experiencing trauma? Like that's not who I am inherently as a person. So it was a fine line, girl. I had to really study him and get out my feelings a little bit and understand that it wasn't personal.
Right. And that is the key. That's the key, because again, I think it's so natural to take it personally. Like, well, I want to help this person. I want to be there, because you're a caring person. Naturally, you want to show up for these people, but also realizing that not everyone responds the same way. Not everybody cares and receives support in the same way. So realizing that it wasn't him necessarily pushing you away, but just trying to dissect the feelings for himself.
Right.
And I think that's so important that you shared, of just saying, hey, there were some days that I realized, I think even you being able to take notice that, okay, he's not responding to calls right now, but he can respond to a text. Or this is the day that I got to actually just pull up and feed this man. This is the day that I need to just give him space, right? And just acknowledging that sometimes support looks like giving someone space to just deal with what they need to deal with. Now, for you, Sean, in this space, I heard you say, I tried to push her away. I tried to she said, give me permission to walk away, because you didn't want to expose her to the pain of you kind of falling apart.
Right.
And I think that's also kind of common, right?
Sure.
Like we think we're burdening people with what we're going through instead of just allowing them to support us. So what did those conversations look for you to even allow her to kind of show up for you like you maybe needed to, or didn't maybe realize how you needed to be shown up for in that moment?
I realized it, but I felt like what I was dealing with was more than that. So it's going to require a lot. I literally couldn't do anything. Like, I literally couldn't do anything. So for her to have to wait on me hand and foot day in and day out, it took a toll on her, which is natural. You know what I mean? Like, I literally couldn't do anything. Help me up, help me to the bathroom, help me down, help me up. Like, it was a lot. So, and then with grief, that on top of physical. So that's me. Like, let me deal with me. And because I can't make you happy if I ain't happy. So let me deal with this. You can go ahead and be happy. If it's meant, we catch up. But yeah, I mean, really, you know what I mean? Because who knows how long that time frame would have been. But she was willing to hang in there. She did. Shit, I'm glad she did there. She my wife. Yeah, man, it was ugly, man. So she stood tall. When I literally was on my back. So she did show me who she was, you know what I mean? But that was a lot for her to accept all of what I was going through. But she learned how to step back, and she learned how to love me too, because that took some time. What she was trying to give in that moment, I ain't need that. Whatever it was, you know what I mean? There was a couple of situations where she was just trying to be pushy, and I'm like, no, like, let me deal. And it wasn't, but I had to learn to communicate that part too. So.
Okay. And that was what I was going to ask, did you feel comfortable sharing some things like, all right, this is too much. I actually don't want you to pop up here, versus her just kind of observing things and testing it almost like a trial and error. But it sounds like it was a little of both, and you had to learn as well to communicate what works for you versus what doesn't in that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome. Okay. Now, what about I'm sure, say you guys were pretty new in the dating game at that point, and I know you have friends, you got your homeboys or whatever. What did that look like? Because I almost feel sometimes it is even too just more challenging with males. Not to say y'all don't talk about serious stuff, but it's more common for women, like for us to talk about feelings and what's going on and what we may be struggling with. Whereas for men, it take a little bit more for y'all to get to those deep rooted things when it's, emotions that are erupting inside of us, right? It's easy to go and talk about the football game, it's easy to catch up about whatever.
Right.
Now, did you feel like you had friends that you could talk to about, how you were feeling at that time? Or was that you were kind of shutting out your friends too?
Well, I didn't know the depths of what I was really going through. So I didn't know what to say to him. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know what to say to them. If you get what, you know what I mean? So it wasn't until after the fact when Ryan and I started to talk about, so I can put a word to, you know what I mean? I'm trying to.
I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think for him, just being around his brother and his friends was comfortable for him because they already knew him. He didn't have to explain. So they didn't talk about a lot, but they already knew how to be there for him. Whereas being that he and I were so new in our relationship, that I was still learning him. So he was going to have to open up more and he was going to have to explain. So he actually, for me, on being on the outside looking and depended on them a lot more just to show up and be present. And they would they would play video games. They would bring a bottle over and like just chill, play cards, like keep him busy. And that was his safe space. Whereas me cultivating a new relationship, you're vulnerable. And I think hindsight being 2020, I think he was again worried if it was too much for me to handle. And in the first 6 months, you're trying to show your good side. Like that's the honeymoon phase. And when you're dealing with grief,
right?
It's kind of
everybody
ugly.
on their best behavior.
Right. It's kind of ugly in grief, right? You lash out, you cry, you deal with a lot of stuff. So his friends and his family were his reprieve. Like they really were there for him in a silent way, not really talking about feelings, but just being present.
Yeah. That's good too, though, because like you say, you realize that different people show up in different ways and how you need them. And every one of you had a position to play. And again, recognizing how your position was different as a new relationship being cultivated versus maybe a brother or a friend or whatever that, like you say, maybe bringing a bottle, bringing cards over, whatever. So the idea is really just learning each other to be able to support each other through that process. So that's really good. I love that. So in terms of the holistic approach you took with meditation and yoga, what, I guess, of all the holistic things, right? There's so many, again, things coming out now. You said therapy was not for you, but of all the things, what particularly made you want to consider yoga and or meditation? What was it about those? So I think it's like what breath work is out there now.
Yep.
It's a few things in the wellness and emotional space. So what about those two?
I grew up in the church, man. I figured, I don't want to ruffle no feathers, but I ain't religious. So I had to take a different approach, you know what I'm saying, with the spiritual side. And it resonated with me.
Yeah.
And it gave me a calm. And it gave me that feeling like, wow, you know what I mean? So that's when I felt it that first time for meditation and the yoga when I'm stretching. And it just took me somewhere. You know what I mean? Like I never took stretching serious with football. So it was a challenge. So when I found a challenge, I want to dive a little deeper. And the yoga definitely was a challenge. Like, and I accepted it.
I'm going to tell you how much of a challenge it was, Patrice. I'm going to tell you. Because, I was certified. And I was like, will you just do a flow with me? Like, let me just do a flow. He looked at me like, all right, man. Like, fine. Right? And I'm like, no, like, it's great. Like, I want you to feel how I'm feeling when I do it. And he did it. Like, all right, I'm going to just do a little 15 minutes. So she'll leave me alone so I can go watch the game or whatever. But outside of that time, like I think he took it more seriously once, that was all that he was physically able to do at one time.
Right. That was all.
And so that's when it like unlocked for him. And then I was like, oh, so now you want to be doing all these downward dogs and
I couldn't run, I couldn't jump,
cat cow and all these positions.
And it gave me, I started to feel the difference. I started to feel better. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, if this don't help, let me do some more yoga. So I was doing yoga every single day, and it helped. Like it took me, like it got me out the woods, like really out the woods. You know what I mean? So that's why I just kept at it. Like they can't tell me this shit don't work because I know it works. Yeah. So and I now preach it to the athletes.
Yoga is the real deal.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what I was gonna ask. So how have you now you apply it to your current the work that you do?
Correct.
Is that something that you also implement with your
Big
clients
time.
to, not just the physical, but you? Okay.
Right. Hey, that's big
Okay.
time.
And how have they responded? Because I imagine some of them may have been resistant initially too, right? Like, I ain't doing no daggone yoga. I ain't
Right.
stretching. It's like
'Cause
I've heard people call yoga stretching for adults or whatever. Like, like, but it's serious.
No,
It is
it's
serious.
top. It's next level.
Yeah, get your body together.
But
Okay.
that's what the pros do. That's what the next level athletes do. That's what the superstars do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The balance, the stability, just it gives you a control. It gives you like an inner strength. Like it's next level. It take an athlete's game to the next level, and I stand on that.
One thing that he always has promoted is get your mind right, and then the body will follow. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that we have stood on at the gym, because I'm going to just tell you right up front, when we opened up the gym, not a lot of people were checking for yoga. Everybody wanted to pump weights and work out and do all the other stuff. And the yoga classes that we would have, it would be like Sean, I'd be guiding the class. It'd be Sean and a few other of his homeboys who, were like, okay, I'll try it.
Right.
Right.
But as we've grown as a business and we kind of tag team our clients together to show them the importance of being a well-rounded athlete or well-rounded person, is it all starts in your mind.
Yes.
And like we've talked about before, about making the yoga classes centered around your audience and making sure that they're going to come back. I think we both have kind of mastered that environment to where they want to come work out and then they want to come do yoga because they know that if their mind's not right, their workout is not going to be efficient.
Right. That's so good. And I love that you both kind of partner with that together, because part of what I talk about as well is just how, obviously for you, Sean, you kind of got into yoga and meditation because as a result of being reactive, right? A lot of times we are reactive to things when things become disruptive in our lives. But, for y'all are already teaching people to be proactive, right? And I talk to people about how you can be proactive in your piece. How can you practice these things so that when the chaos or the conflict disrupts, because it's going to happen, it's inevitable, those things occur. How can you already be prepared to combat it, right? And so helping them, training your athletes, training your people to already incorporate that into their lifestyle, you're setting them up for so much more than just getting their body in shape. You are literally preparing and prepping their mind for any type of events that may come up that they can quickly pivot. So I really, really love that. Love that. So any other, I guess, guidance, tips that you would give to someone else that is maybe listening to this right now, maybe another male that's like, man, I didn't know somebody else could be going through this, that may like literally just be going through this at this very period, or like you may have been a little bit of a delayed reaction. What is some last minute guidance, or even I would say signs that they probably identify to say, okay, I've probably gotten in a place that I don't want to be. I'm having these thoughts, or I'm having these feelings or experiences that tells me I need to look at a different holistic approach.
Oh man, it was every emotion, man. Like if I felt every emotion, I really can't pinpoint one. That's how chaotic it was. So that's why I knew I needed something. You get what I'm saying? So,
right.
I felt every emotion. I don't know.
It sounds like to me when I hear it's like it was to the point where you were experiencing everything where it was like, I can't do, this is the last option because what I'm feeling is everything, and I can't keep feeling everything.
I mean, it was from grief to chronic pain, then not physically being able to get up on my own. it was, then you come back there with lack of sleep because I wasn't sleeping. So then it rose in weeks. Then we talking months. It was just, I felt every emotion. I went through a lot.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Shit, if yoga that one time worked, I had to keep doing it. just to give me some peace and keep me centered for real.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because man, it was crazy. It was every emotion for real. I hope I answered your question, but it was really that crazy.
No, it does. Because like I said, I think again, even though you're saying every emotion, it's somebody out there that's gonna be like, yeah, I've been experiencing every emotion. Like I've been experiencing the anger, I've been experiencing anxiety, I've been experiencing resentment, I'm experiencing
guilt, grief,
the guilt, right?
You
All of those things, right? And so when you say every emotion, that resonates with me, and I know it's gonna resonate with other people because that's likely what other people are feeling. You can't necessarily pinpoint one thing, but I wanted to make sure that people acknowledge, because another thing we talk about is how people will normalize what has become, a typical day for them.
Right.
And so they oftentimes can't even identify like, wow, this is a problem now. Like I haven't realized that I've just been angry or that I've been resentful, that I'm more anxious, because it's become a regular part of their everyday occurrence to where they don't realize like, man, I probably do need to look at a different approach to how I've been handling stuff, right? Because they may not be identical where you are physically, you were also physically impaired, right? Where someone else may just be going through the emotional grief process. You know what I mean?
Not to cut you off, but at that moment when I started getting up and moving, and she would try to put me out the house to surprise me, anxiety flare up. I'm like, what in the hell? You remember I kept saying, babe, I don't know what's going on, but take me home. Yeah. No, I'm serious. Like it happened a few times. So then I started reading up on anxiety. Then I learned about depression. I'm like, oh shit, I'm depressed. Like what the fuck?
Wow.
Whoa. You remember that? So then she tried to surprise me again, take me out because I'm on my back. Take me outside, ride around, or get something to eat. Take me home. Anxiety flare up. Like it was crazy. It was but that was fresh off an injury, so you know how that goes. That was
But I think also another important point, Patrice, about whether you're physically injured or just mentally injured, or not mentally injured, but going through some mental struggles, dealing with mental illness or mental challenges, if you get so overwhelmed, they can physically manifest. So there is a saying that says, if you don't address your wellness, you will be addressing your illness. And that could be both physically and mentally. And so I think that a lot of times with men, they feel weak, or they feel like it's not okay to demonstrate mental instability because that makes you less than. So the main thing, the main thing that I think I want to say, just watching him go through it, is that if a man is out there dealing with something, it's okay to not be okay. You have to trust your partner enough, or your support system enough, to be there for you.
Right.
But you also have to let them know how to be there for you. Just as simple, right now I'm going through it. Just as simple, I'm going through something. I'm not really sure what it is. But I'm going through something, and I'm gonna need some extra lifting up.
And say it's okay to say you're not okay. How about that? Like you have to say you're not okay. You know what I mean? People don't say that. Like really say that.
Right. That's so true, because it's like we always want to look like we got it together, particularly men, because it's something that y'all have been groomed to not show emotion, toughen up. It's okay, right? And so I think for the last question, you answered it from Rylan, of what you saw in him, and just how you see it show up, that men may not just overall want to express that they're not okay. But for you, from a female perspective, as the support system, as the partner in this role, what were signs, I guess, for you to identify, for someone else that, again, similarly, that may be in your position? What are signs for them to look for to say, okay, this has gotten bad now? Like, this is not just, I don't want to say normal grief because grief looks different for everyone, right? But it's like, this is serious where someone else or some other process has to intervene. Like, what are some signs that you felt you identified to say, all right, maybe I can introduce yoga, or maybe we can introduce this process or this support?
I think for me, and this is just, like I said, my own personal experience, being more reactive to stimuli. So like loud noises or even being outside for long periods of time, just his level of anxiety went up to 1,000. Like he was talking about, if I wanted to just surprise him and take him out to his favorite restaurant or just take him out to the beach to just go sit, he had to know every detail. And I was like, dang, like, can you just get in the car? Like, I gotta break everything down. But that was one big thing. He had a very short fuse to very small things, but they were big to him.
Right.
And I made sure not to minimize his response to them because the anxiety was very real. He didn't have like the textbook, signs for like depression, anxiety, like didn't want to shower, like none of that.
Yeah.
Like, so it's very person-centered, but I think the important thing is to know the person enough to know when things are not at their baseline. So if you're not at your baseline, like Sean is a very outgoing person, very talkative, the textbook definition of life of the party, like that is him. Everyone wants to come around and be around him, and it came to a point where he didn't want to be around anybody. He didn't want to go anywhere. He didn't want to be around anybody, not even his brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in a time of grief, dealing with the loss of their mother, you would think that his brother would be the one person that he would want around him all the time, and he didn't want to be around him either.
Yeah.
Not because there was anything wrong. He just didn't want to be bothered. And so for me, that was
that wasn't all, that was like here and there type.
Right. It was very sporadic, but to me, that was a sign that things were getting worse than getting better. It was really more so of his reactive response to certain stuff, where it was like, okay, you normally wouldn't get upset about this, so why are you upset about this now? And I didn't push him to explain it to me. I allowed him to sit with it and then let me know what is going wrong. We would do like little mini check-ins and stuff, like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? Individually, and then where we were at in our relationship as well. And I think that helped. But just being open and cognizant of what's going on and what's that person's baseline is important to know, so that you know when they get off track.
Right. That's the key. Just knowing your person enough to notice when something is a little bit off, a little bit, like you say, the baseline has shifted a little bit. This is so good, y'all. I really, really appreciate this dialogue. I think it's been so, so incredibly helpful. So something that I like to do at the end of all of my podcast episodes is rapid value questions. And they are 4 questions that I just kind of, sprinkle in to add the ribbon, tie the ribbon on the podcast, right? So it's 4 questions. It's no right or wrong response. It's just whatever is the first thing that comes to y'all mind. Okay, so I'm going to start here. And you both can answer, or you can ping pong, whatever it is that you feel you want to do. All right. Okay. So the first question is, what is one thing that you like to do to sustain or reset your peace?
It's rapid.
Ah, shit. I gotta meditate.
Meditate. I love it. Okay. The second question, name one book or song that's helped you to define peace.
I think I said this the last time. The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel.
Yes, I remember. Yep. They're going to just get it again because they haven't added to their book list now. It reiterates, add this to the list. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
The Way of a Superior Man.
What is it called, Sean? I'm sorry.
The Way of a Superior Man.
What, the way of a superior man?
The way of the superior man. Mm-hmm.
Got you. Love it. Okay. Question number 3. How do you define peace for yourself now?
Rapid.
I define peace for myself now, the art of doing nothing. Like really honoring myself. If I don't feel like going anywhere or doing anything but just being, then I'm not going to do it. So I really am honoring that now more.
Yes, I love it. And I'm going to be interested to see how much your answer changed from the first time. I always get interested, like even listen to other people's podcasts when they may have a repeat guest to see how their answers may have changed, because we're constantly always evolving, right? So that's why I'm like, I put the emphasis on how do you define it now, because it changes. I think it can absolutely change. Okay, last question is a fill in the blank. It's 3 blanks. It'll be easy, y'all. The first one is your name. So it is, my name is blank, and without peace, I'd probably be blank, but with peace, I am blank.
You want to take it?
Damn, say this again.
I'll go first, Patrice, since I got a little bit of experience. Right. Okay. My name is Rylan, and without peace, I am out of balance, but with peace, I am free.
Yes, let's go. Okay. All right, Sean.
You got the first one. You know your name, right?
I just gave the hint.
My name is Sean. My name is Sean Harrison. Without peace, I am a total mess.
But with peace, you are.
But with peace, I'm godly.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
You done made Patrice clap her hands and everything.
Yes. I always like to hear what people gonna come up with at the spur of the moment. It's like, oh, this is clever. That's good. But no, seriously, y'all have been phenomenal. I certainly appreciate you both for honoring me in this space with in the Oasis space. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you all. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Okay. Ooh, didn't I tell y'all this episode was so good? I just love their energy and how they bounce off each other. It's so good. But, I thought it was so important because I'm a firm believer that Black men need the couch too. But in this case, Sean explained how therapy didn't necessarily work for him. And I know it's a process to identify a good therapist, but I'm so glad that he recognized that there were other holistic approaches such as meditation and yoga that could help him navigate through some of the traumatic experiences that he was going through in his life. I mean, grief is such a big thing, particularly when it is a parental that you lose. I mean, it's no one way to handle grief, but I'm glad that Sean had that outlet. And I really love how Rylan added her input as to what is necessary to be a supportive partner. And I think that looks different in every relationship. But I loved how she, provided some examples of understanding when he maybe wouldn't answer the phone, but he would respond to text, right? And so part of that is just learning your partner, learning the loved one, who it is that you're helping to support at that time, and recognizing when it's time to kind of back away, to let them figure things out themselves, versus the times when you have to push because they need to push themselves, right? I think it's a fine balance, but I love how she had to work to navigate that, to say, well, no, this isn't okay. I'm not going to allow you to shut me out because I know you're hurting and this is how I'm going to show up for you, right? And I think that's so important. It's so important to have those type of people in our lives. It's particularly important to have in our partner. And I just love how they went through some of those very specific details of how they navigated that challenging time, because it is important. Right. Again, I think as driven women that I tend to attract in this community, it is so common for us to want to be superwoman and come save the day and be the be all end all for our person, but having to recognize that this person also has their own challenges that they have to work through internally, but how can I still show up for them to support them in this time of grief, in this time of challenge, in this time of chaos, right? And so again, as we are closing out this episode, I'd love for you, if you have a partner, and maybe this is something you all have not even discussed because it's just not a common dialogue, but ask your partner, what does support look like for you, right? Because I think similar to love languages, we assume that being supportive looks the same way to us that it does to our partner. And that may not be the case, right? Again, and even Rylan's example, it was, okay, well, I'm going to drop this food off, or I'm going to come and bring you, drive you around so you can get some fresh air. To someone else, support may actually be leaving me alone for 2 to 3 days to get myself together. It looks different for everyone, but we don't want you to be offended if the support doesn't look the same as support looks to you, right? And I think that's all the key in communicating effectively to identify what works for you, and also acknowledging that support may not look the same in every situation, right? It may look different in a situation of grief versus a situation of just, another challenge within work or a challenge with another personal relationship that you may be working to navigate. It may look different in various scenarios, right? And that's, again, what you have to continue communicating. So if you'd like to connect with Rylan and Sean, you can find them on Instagram, Rylan_Ashley, and Be Great Fit. And that is BGR8 Fit. Both of them are on Instagram, and they have websites as well. So To Yoga and Beyond and BeGreatFitness.com, which I will also drop in the show links. Also, if you'd like to connect with me, I would love to hear from you. I always love to receive DMs and emails from my listeners. I love to hear your takeaways and your questions, anything that you want to share with me. And again, I always say, join our Facebook community, which is the Oasis Space Peace Pursuits community. It's a phenomenal community of peace pursuits where we talk to each other, we hold each other accountable. And I think it's a great space if it's something that you're looking for as another opportunity to form community. And lastly, if you'd like to work with me, I would implore you to check out the link in the show notes. You can book a free discovery consultation. I would love to speak with you and learn a little bit more if you realize, hey, I need some assistance in navigating these relationships, not, trying to over-insert myself in spaces, but communicate compassionately with the person that I care for, or maybe another area that you need assistance with. But again, happy to work with you. Until next time, I want you to live your best life and embody peace without ever compromising your authentic identity. Love, light, and especially peace. Later, y'all.